Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. We are still going through Triggernometry's interview with former abortion clinic CEO Anne Furedi. The section we are at now is called Philosophy versus Real Life. So this should be interesting.
I think that it is actually like that. There is no halfway house on it. But I think what is an interesting thing here is that, and I don't want to introduce a huge amount of marital discord into your relationship or whatever, but I think that when you say, oh, it's just a matter of inconvenience, or it's just a matter of, and it's just, and all of this weighed up, it, you might want to talk to a woman who is 8 months pregnant, about what it means to be pregnant, what pregnancy means, what giving birth to a child means, and all of the stuff that goes with it, physically and emotionally, and think about whether how think about how reasonable it is to say to somebody who absolutely does not want that to happen to her, to go through that.
Again, she's with the assumption that the woman climbing on the abortion table is absolutely adamant. There's no way she wants this baby coming out alive. She wants it dead. I sincerely doubt that that's usually the case.
Hold on, but that isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about the example you gave of the woman in Brixton who would quite happily have had the baby if her boyfriend was in another country. So we're not talking about someone who doesn't want to have the baby. We're talking about someone who doesn't want to have the baby because it inconveniences them in terms of their relationships with the other people in their life.
Oh no, I think what I was hearing from that story, and again, I think it comes down to what goes on with this, is that what I heard listening to her was that she has a son who has a very important relationship with his father, which would be blown apart if another man is introduced into the mix.
She's forgetting that the woman already introduced this other man into the mix.
Being the father of another child that is introduced into the family. And you're right, it's not the destruction of the physicality of life, it's not the stopping of a beating heart, but what she was anticipating was the end of life as we know it. It's not an inconvenience, it's not just things being a bit disrupted, it's the end of her family situation. And that is very often what you hear from women is, I cannot cope with having this child, and they'll often refer to, what other people will call a fetus or an embryo. I cannot have this baby and hold my existing family together. And I think that
So instead of empowering the woman, you're just like, yeah, you're not capable.
It's all about context, and it's all about who decides. And how you do it. I mean, if you want
Let me give you another quick example, Mayor. I have a friend who was raped, and she had the child, and that massively radicalized her into a pro-life position. And she says it's not the child's fault.
It absolutely isn't.
It's not the child's fault. It's nothing to. So even if this happened to me and it was awful and all of that, it's not the child's fault. So I look. I am the last person that wants to tell women what to do with their body. But with that argument, I'm just being honest with you about my instinctive reaction. Yes, it's important for her little boy to have the relationship with his dad, right? But the fact that she is pregnant by someone else is not the fault of the baby that she's carrying. And the fact that that relationship with her former partner may be badly affected, and the child that she already has may be badly, it's not the fault of the baby that she's carrying, and yet that baby is the one that is paying the price for what, let's be honest, without being judgmental, are her decisions.
Yeah, but the thing is that somebody, right? Somebody has to make that moral decision and live with it.
There's the assumption that if there's difficulties surrounding a pregnancy, that there has to be made a decision whether or not you kill the baby. And that's not true. That's one of the reasons I don't like the pro-life bumper sticker, my mom chose life or your mom chose life. And it's like, if, abortion is never on the table, that's not, I chose life, that's, I never even considered not letting this baby live. So, the fact that we consider abortion to be a potential solution to so many situations is, I think, part of why it gets considered so often. Because it's like, if you see a commercial for Pepsi, they are not running that commercial so that you will immediately run to the store and buy some Pepsi. They are establishing in your mind that when you're thirsty, you're going to want Pepsi. So when you're in the store, you want to buy Pepsi, so it's in the house so that you can drink it when you're thirsty. It's wanting you to make a lifestyle choice of keeping Pepsi in your refrigerator. And all of the abortion rhetoric isn't to sell you an abortion right now because you might not be pregnant yet. It's to establish, so to say, that abortion's in your fridge, and that if there's anything bad or troublesome happening during that pregnancy, you reach in your metaphorical fridge and grab the abortion option.
And I think that, what I'm saying is that I can understand that you and a whole number of other people might see that baby inside her that does not even know that it's alive as having a value that should disrupt those lives, and that's okay. I understand where people come from on that. Do you know, as I said to you, and BPAS now actually is running an assisted conception service for women who can't become pregnant because it is a thoroughly pro-choice organisation. I do not know whether I would ever have been able to face having an abortion myself, because I went through a very long period of time when I desperately wanted to be pregnant and I desperately wanted to have a baby, and I felt that I couldn't do that. Now, even now, I have what great contemporary philosopher Ronald Dworkin describes as being a sense of cosmic awe when I look at an embryo. It is awesome, literally. And to think of ending that and cutting it off seems incredibly profound. But I'm not going to live with the consequences of that.
Honey, in the afterlife, you might be facing the consequences of that. And I talk about Carol Everett. Carol Everett had run a string of abortion clinics in the Dallas area. And she said sometimes she had doubts about the rightness of what she was doing, especially when she was over doing the little count to make sure that they had, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a spine, a pelvis, and, sufficient bits of organs and placenta to feel confident that the abortion was complete. And she said she'd be looking at this shredded, tiny human and be shocked at what she was participating in. And then she would tell herself, I'm helping women have safe legal abortions. She would talk herself into ignoring what she was seeing. And she said that the hardest part for her to deal with moving forward with her life was the sight of the tiny intestines, because the arms, the legs, and that was the shape. You know, you get a doll can have arms and legs and a head, but those tiny intestines kind of cried out to her that this tiny human was meant to live. And in an interview once, she said, "And that is something I have to be healed of every day." She every day has to come to grips with all of those depths that she contributed to. And I hope that before this woman dies, she comes to grips with what she did. How you can do something that you know is killing a unique human being and be okay with that, regardless of the reason that human being is being killed, it boggles the mind.
It is, and that's why I think we all look at these things differently. And that's why, you know, the case that I'm really trying to make when I'm writing is these things are nuanced and they're difficult, and there are arguments that you can put for and against, and we can discuss it philosophically.
Now, I've said this before, that the abortion rights people say that the issue is nuanced, but the solution is easy. The is abortion right or wrong? Well, that's really nuanced, but she's pregnant and she's facing difficulties. Well, abortion. Whereas the pro-lifers are the opposite. They say that morally, you don't kill this innocent baby, but everything else is the morass that you have to sort through. Okay, you know, what are we going to do about this custody situation with, you wish this boyfriend would just, you know, move to Antarctica or something so that you don't have to deal with him. That you spend the time sorting out that hot mess. That the nuts and bolts of it is a mess, but the morality of it is pretty straightforward. Whereas the abortion advocates say that the morality is very muddled, but the solution is very straightforward, which is you just get rid of this new human being and everything's fine.
But somebody's making a decision, and I have seen women in BPAS clinics who've said, I never thought I would bring myself to have an abortion. I've had women who have protested outside abortion clinics, who, when they have faced that line on the pregnancy test, have suddenly realised that.
And to me, the fact that they're doing abortions on those women does not, to me, show a lot of respect for what the woman's moral values are. You know, if they were doing what they were doing out of respect for the woman's moral values, they would be saying to her, you were out here protesting, you were out here saying that it's never okay to kill a little tiny innocent human being. How are you going to live with yourself after you do this? And really confront her. She needs tough love.
This is not going to work for them. At the same time, I've had women who have been absolutely 100% pro-choice. 100%. They've been on the marches, they bought the t-shirt, they've got the sticker, and yet when they become pregnant, they found that they felt an overwhelming sense of nurturing for that child. And I think in these circumstances, when things are this kind of personal, the best thing that we can do is to accept that there's lots of philosophy going on, and, you know, if people looking at the podcast want to, you know, read a copy of the book, there's a lot of it in there. there's a woman called Judith Jarvis Thompson. We talk about
the famous violinist,
kind of comparable situation. She did this thing that philosophers do of constructing this mind experiment of a violinist who wakes up and somebody's attached him to another person, like with an artificial umbilical cord, and he's basically saying, look, you just have to put up with them for, it's a violinist who's been attached to somebody who, you just have to, put up with them for 9 months, but you really need to do this because they're a world famous violinist and they'll die if you don't put up with this inconvenience. And of course, you would never let it happen. And she says, and that's a born person who's a famous violinist. It's not even, you can't even make the argument that it has no sense of itself yet.
The other failure in the famous violinist scenario is Thompson was saying that you have the right to unplug yourself from the violinist, but can she argue that you have the right to go over and shoot him in the head? Because abortion is not merely withdrawing life support, it is causing that entity's death, either by starvation, by dismemberment, by a lethal injection of cardiac drugs, but you are taking direct action to cause a human death. And that is very different from refraining from providing artificial support.
So you can do all the philosophy, you can do all of the science, but at the end of the day, it's down to a person to make a decision about something that's going on in their life. And I think we have to have a load of these arguments, but ultimately they have to make the decision.
Do you have sympathy for the pro-life side of the argument and pro-life people? Because frequently in this country they're mischaracterised, they're seen as being bigoted, hating women. We all know the slurs that get thrown at them.
Do you know what? I think at the moment there is a profound intolerance of the questioning of the moral issues and the legal issues around abortion. And I think that one of the things that troubles me is that abortion is now regarded as a medical procedure that you just kind of can't take anything other than a kind of almost public health benefit view on. And I think it does miss out the fact that there are a lot of moral issues that are around and that we should constantly be talking about and debating. And I made the point earlier, I know, when I was talking to you, that I think that we have to regard it as a method of birth control. And I think in a society that wants to allow people full control over who they have a child with and when they have a baby, abortion needs to be seen as a method of contraception. But I don't think we should ever forget the points that you're raising about that there is something that seems to be fundamentally morally different about ending a life to not starting a life. And I think we have to keep that question debated and thought about. Because I actually, I think women think about it. I think, and women will say, I'll have an abortion if I can have it using that pill and within the first couple of months, but I wouldn't have an abortion after that. So women are thinking about it. We don't lose anything by accepting that. And the demonisation of people who seek to question it is utterly wrong. And one of the things that I really have tried to do when I was writing this book was to think about the discussions that I've had with people who are against abortion in principle and try and think about how I deal with those arguments. And, you know, so yeah, that's a good point. So because I think we need to do that on a lot of other things as well, actually. It would have been very helpful if we could have had some of those discussions about COVID, for example, rather than you're pro-vax, you're anti-vax.
Wow, yeah, honey, yay.
You're pro-choice, you're anti-choice. We need more of a space where we can consider and have grown-up, intelligent discussions, I think.
Well, for that reason, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Anne.
Okay, so that's this section. They're going to ask her next if she has anything that she thought they should have discussed, and so I'm going to end here because we're already 20 minutes into it. And if she brings up anything interesting, there'll be one more video tomorrow.